Dan Orlovsky out of the gates joins Wilde Tausch, Jesse Nelson in for Jason, along with the Packers Hall of Famer Mark Tauscher. Dan, great to have you back. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Good to be with you guys. Hope you're doing well. All good.
We are fantastic. It is so great to have you back on the show. And one of the reasons that we wanted to reach out to you is because you've been talking some high praise about Packers quarterback Jordan Love in recent days on Get Up and NFL Live and the various places that we can catch you. For those unfamiliar, what has been your stance on Packers quarterback Jordan Love over the last 24 to 48 hours that has made some news and some ripples here in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I just think he's got a chance to have a pretty darn good season. I'll start with this. This offense that Matt LaFleur runs comes from that Mike Shanahan, Gary Kubiak, Kyle Shanahan tree. So the scheme I've witnessed elevate players kind of better than their talent would naturally. And that's not a knock on these guys. We've watched Jimmy Garoppolo, a good player, play really good. I watched Matt Schaub, have a top 5 kind of season 3 or 4 years in a row in this offense. We've seen this with Ryan Tannehill will be a top 10 quarterback. So the scheme elevates guys. I think the knowns that we have about Jordan Love, number one, he was a first-round draft pick. We know that. Number two, he's been able to sit behind Aaron for 3 years. And there's no way that you don't learn good things and get better when you do that. Number three, and probably the most important part of it, is they were comfortable, no matter what anyone says, we're going, okay, it's time for Jordan. Those are the knowns. The unknowns, how many other teams are going to draft him in the first round? And so, there's a really good starting point. I think the second thing, or the third thing, is how young and talented they are on offense. Now, it's unproven, and there's going to be growing pains, but they're young and talented. And if you take a scheme that elevates guys, a quarterback that's been given the time to kind of work out the kinks in their game and be in a good standing ground and put young talent and promising talent around them, it kind of points all directions to a guy playing well.
So Dan, what do you like most about Jordan Love? I know it's a small sample size, and it's
Sure.
been 3 years. What do you like most about what you've seen from him that makes you think that he can be successful in this offense?
So going back to when he came out of school, you saw the ball jumped off of his hand, powerful arm, can make kind of some of those throws when his body was in awkward positions, and was very talented and raw. So there's a lot to work with. And then if you go back to some of the time he played in last year, the number one development with his game was how he started to marry the throw with his feet with his eyes, that there was more of a rhythm to his drop rather than an athleticism to his drop or a twitchiness to his drop. I think of some of the throws in the preseason against New Orleans that stood out. And then I did a breakdown on NFL Live a couple weeks ago just of him in that Philly game. And I think that the interesting part was how on time and on rhythm he was playing. Because a lot of times when you get some of these quarterbacks that are a little bit more sudden and twitchy and athletic, it's hard to get them to play rhythmically because they in many ways have to slow down a little bit. And that's very unnatural for guys that have been doing it for 8 years a certain way. And I think if you go back and watch that Philly game and watch how he was marrying, 1, 2, 3, back foot in the ground, in breaker to Christian Watson, balls to come out right now, kind of timing the rhythm of that drop with the pass concept, and there's a beauty, and that's why, as much as we don't like it, there is beauty in letting guys sit and develop because they can take some of the bad habits out of their game and while they lay the foundation for the good habits.
Yeah, so when you're evaluating a young quarterback, are you looking more at what they do great or their limitations and what mistakes they make? Because there are going to be mistakes. I think everybody in Green Bay, everybody understands that. But are you really looking for that high end? What can he be when he's at his best?
Yeah, absolutely. You start there because it's the NFL. If you don't have high-end talent and if you can't do things that are necessary when it comes to the physical ability, you can't play in the NFL. You might be a good college player. You might be able to go to college on scholarship or start in high school. But if you don't have high-end physical talent and be able to operate or kind of execute with that physical talent, you can't play in the NFL. So you start there. And that's why Jordan was, hey, a potential first-round pick ends up going in the first round. And then you have to look at the flaws. I always say this. Guys don't fail in the NFL at that position that are drafted highly because they're not talented. It's because they don't fix their fundamental flaw and or flaws. And I think that's, where there is some beauty, again, in Jordan being able to sit. Jordan has high-end talent. Is his high-end talent, those of Josh Allen and Justin Herbert and Patrick? I don't think that. Unlikely he would have slid to the mid-20s in the first round. Jordan's flaw was he was really raw. Jordan's flaw was he would drop his elbow at times. Jordan's flaw was he would become elongated in his lower body, which kind of forced some inaccuracies. Jordan's flaw was his feet would be all over the place in unnecessary times. A guy who had similar, kind of flaws was Sam Darnold. The difference was Sam never got to sit and work on them. Jordan did. So I think that when you look at the kind of high-end talent and then the time that was allowed to work some of those kinks and flaws out, we have to see it play itself over the season. That's why you're so encouraged.
Yeah, and you were talking about the system, all right, when you're looking at Shanahan and Kubiak. What do you think this system will do to help Jordan? And is this kind of the first look at Matt LaFleur? Because with Aaron Rodgers, the system was there, but Aaron, do you feel like Aaron kind of took over and it wasn't really what LaFleur wants to do the last couple of years, or do you think that is what Matt LaFleur is all about when you look at the tape the last 2 or 3 seasons with Aaron running it?
A little bit of both. I think first of all, Aaron should have taken over. If Matt LaFleur did not let Aaron have full autonomy and ownership of that offense, we would have killed Matt LaFleur for it. It also led to, 2 NFC title games and 2 MVPs. So that's proof that was the right decision. I think you'll see a little bit of both. What you saw with Aaron, probably a little bit more than what Matt was accustomed to, was so much of the RPOs, so much of the at or behind the line of scrimmage throws to allow, pre-snap, your overhang defender that's supposed to be playing in between the receiver and the line of scrimmage or the football is tucked a little inside. I'll kick the ball to Devontae. We'll get 4 or 5 yards. So I think, how well Jordan can operate that and also the perimeter players can operate that will determine how much of that they actually do. And then I think you'll see a little bit more of the traditional stuff that Matt LaFleur has been accustomed to, more back to under center, more of that zone scheme, more of marrying what that looks like pre-snap and post-snap run action to some of the bootlegs and the heavy ball play actions that create some of the chunk throws. So I expect to see both of it, probably a little bit more athleticism, and again, some of that marriage of the run and the action together than the RPOs until they prove that they can operate them as quickly and as efficiently as Aaron did.
Joined by ESPN NFL analyst Dan Orlovsky out of the gates on Wilde Tausch. Jesse and Tausch today with Jason on assignment this week. Dan, I want to ask you about a poll that we asked our fans yesterday. Is it fair or unfair to expect Jordan Love to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFC after the 2023 season concludes? Tausch said yes pretty strongly. 71% of our fans, though, say it's unfair to set that expectation. What do you say?
I think it's fair. Okay, so if we look at the NFC, and if we're saying top 5 quarterback in the NFC, you're saying you got to kind of be in the conversation. Let's say Jalen Hurts is up at the top, and then we're putting Dak Prescott somewhere near there. Matthew Stafford, if he's healthy, somewhere near there. And then it's this group of quarterbacks that's going to be Derek Carr. How good is Bryce Young going to be? Geno Smith is in that top 4 or so. So the biggest thing is Jordan Love has to play himself into being in that conversation. If Jordan Love plays himself to being in the conversation of top 5 in the NFC, the Packers go to the playoffs. I don't think that's unfair. Again, this goes back to, hey, young man, you sat for 3 years. We have given you all the opportunity to get your game perfectly kind of in the situation and style that you want it. Number 2, we got a ton of young talent around you. Number 3, we still have 2 bona fide NFL backs. One of them is the best dual threat back in the NFL and a good offensive line. Your defense is crazy talented. Now the defense has got to play better and way more aggressive. They can't play as soft as they have. But I think that if Jordan Love doesn't play himself into the conversation of playing top 5 NFC level quarterback, that's a very big disappointment for the Packers.
That makes total sense. And then I also saw you guys talking on Get Up last week about which NFC North quarterback do you want to win a game, and I'm seeing Greeny and Louis Riddick and everybody picking Justin Fields and Jared Goff. Is it crazy to say that we expect Jordan Love by the end of the year to be a top 5 NFC quarterback when coming into the season he's probably the 4th pick of quarterbacks within his own division in the NFC North?
No, because we don't know anything about Jordan. Like what we know about Jordan are just educated assumptions and or guesses. I know that Jared Goff's going to play well because Jared Goff, when protected, can throw it as good as anybody. Jared would be in that top 5 conversation as well. Kirk's got one of the, if not the best receiver in football, in Justin Jefferson, and an offense that's going to be very explosive, and they've got a first-round receiver that they're marrying. Justin is incredibly dynamic. So we've seen all those guys in action. Jordan, some people are like myself are encouraged by, are intrigued by. We just don't know. So we will always go with known commodities more so than unknown commodities. But again, I think if we get into November, December, and we're having that conversation and Jordan's not part of the group, or, making people say, oh, maybe Jordan Love after 10 or 12 weeks, the body of work is enough, that again would be a very big disappointment.
Dan, you're just talking about the defense, and there is a ton of talent. 8 first-round picks. And, Mina Kimes last offseason was making bold predictions. I was with her that this defense should be one of the top defenses in the league. What did you see last year as far as why they weren't? And what are you kind of thinking this needs to look like this year if this team is going to be a playoff team? The defense has to be a lot better than what they were last year.
Yeah, I thought they were soft. They never challenged offenses. They never dictated to offenses. And when I say soft, I'm not calling these dudes out being soft. Literally, I'm saying schematically. They would give as an offensive person, when you watch tape and you watch defenses not attack you and you watch defenses not put pressure on you or dictate to you, there's no fear. You're always giving me stuff. There were so many moments last year that the defense would give 5-yard completions. And I understand there's different theories to defensive football. Like, as an offensive person, when you walk the line of scrimmage and the Packers are playing their umbrella coverage and there's no hands on receivers at the line of scrimmage and they're trying to make sure that the ball never goes over their head, I'm constantly in a state of comfort. They got to make offenses uncomfortable. Like, they got to put I remember playing against some of these defenses. Now, this is a long time ago. I get it. But, like, when they – get the line of scrimmage against the Packers and be like, I got no idea what's happening. And you've got corners on the outside and they're smacking the heck out of dudes at the line of scrimmage, and I'm holding the football back there and you're going, get open someone. So they gotta get way more rather than sit back and just give so much stuff away.
Yeah, and that's also part we heard Jair Alexander last year talk about that. They did change some things up, but were you surprised that Matt LaFleur kept Joe Barry on as the defensive coordinator when you saw some of the things you saw on film last year?
Yes. I know Joe for a long time. I think the world of him. I think he's a good football coach. I think he's a great guy. I know Matt and him have been together for a long time as friends. You get concerned about situations like that because you sit there and go, is that decision or is that loyalty going to come back to hurt you and or haunt you? And there's value in loyalty. There's no doubt about it. There's not a ton of value in it in the NFL, unfortunately. And so I was surprised. You don't know who else was in the conversation to a potential, hey, if we move on from Joe, who are we getting? But you sit there and the conversation from Matt LaFleur to Joe Barry has got to be, you've got the talent. Go be aggressive. If you're going to constantly play in a state of surrender, then you're no longer going to be the guy, no matter how much I love you.
That's a very interesting spot. A couple more for you, Dan. We'll let you go. When you look back at last season and on offense with Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback, I think we were all shocked here that when he played 17 games, he only won 8. You're predicting, if Jordan Love is up to the standard we all hope, that this is a playoff team with 10 wins. Why did last year go so badly on offense for this group with Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback?
Okay, so number one, the quarterback broke his thumb. That is going to minimize not only his performance, but what you're capable of doing. I was one of those people screaming last year, Aaron, get back under center. And then, after having some conversations and kind of having some insider moments or conversations with Matt, realized like the thumb played a part in what they were capable of doing. The kind of the fluctuation of the people who were playing up front, Bakhtiari missing time and then Elgton Jenkins missing time. So, your two best offensive linemen missing time had negative impact. Number 3, Christian Watson missing 4 games. Romeo Doubs missing 4 games. Randall Cobb missing 4 or 5 games. So it was this kind of perfect storm of, oh man, our offensive line's banged up, our quarterback's banged up, we can't do as much as we want. These young receivers that we need to have on the field for system and developing, they're missing time. So it wasn't just a singular thing, it was a multitude. Like, I put it this way to everybody. Guys, if last year Patrick Mahomes broke his thumb, Travis Kelce and Juju Smith-Schuster each missed 4 games, Trey Smith and Orlando Brown Jr. were in and out of the lineup, the Chiefs don't win the Super Bowl. It no matter who you are, it is going to have a negative impact on your performance. And unfortunately, everything happened kind of at the same time for Green Bay.
Yeah. How do you think, in your opinion, with the O-line that is not going to be as good in New York, how do you think Aaron is going to play out in the AFC with the Jets?
Yeah, number one, I don't think the O-line is going to be not as good. Everyone talks about the Jets' offensive line, and the reality is this, and there are ifs, but you could say this about basically any team. If you told me Mekhi Becton, the left tackle who was a star his first 20 games, is healthy, and then there's Elijah Vera Tucker at guard, they drafted Tippmann out of Wisconsin, Laken Tomlinson at right guard, and then right tackle is going to be either Max Mitchell or Dwayne Brown. If those 5 guys play for a chunk of the season, that's a very good offensive line. There's no question on ability or capability in the Jets' offensive line. They got to stay healthy. Becton and Vera Tucker both missed the season last year. So if they stay healthy, Aaron probably goes into a situation where the offensive line is just as good, if not better, than it was in Green Bay over the past couple years. And I think their offensive line was very good. I think Garrett Wilson's the next Devontae Adams type of player. 1,500 yards should be the kind of standard for him this year. Everyone knows Lazard is a very trustworthy number 2. They got 2 good tight ends. Breece Hall is the next Alvin Kamara in the league. So they got a ton of talent in the offense. They just have to cross their fingers that the offensive line stays healthy. If they do, they are a Super Bowl contender. There's no question about it. And Aaron will play much more like the 2021 seasons than he did the 22 season.
Dan, have you thought a lot about getting into coaching? Because the way you break down film, you feel like I think most of us feel like that's something. Is that something that you think you'll eventually get into?
Yeah, I kind of am a person that I never say never, but I try to stay as kind of present and kind of in the moment as I can. Yeah, I think about coaching all the time. I've got 4 young kids that I truly enjoy watching them grow up. They're 11 and 7, so kind of being a part of their life is challenging when you're a coach. It's not impossible. It's challenging. It's more challenging. I've had conversations with Matt about it, of going out there. So I had some conversations this offseason. It'll always be something that I'm interested in. Right now, I love being at ESPN. I love being able to get to do what I do, and I'm super thankful for that. We'll see kind of every year it presents new opportunities, but right now I love kind of being able to get to be a part of ESPN and kind of share my love of football with everyone.
Did you just say you had conversations with LaFleur on coming out?
Yep.
Wow. Well, thanks for breaking a little news. All right, Dan, before we let you go, you always give great food takes. We just had something. I saw a kid eating watermelon with mustard on it. Any crazy summer food ideas that maybe we haven't thought of that you have that you want to tell our fans that we should maybe delve into over this 4th of July weekend coming up?
Wait, first of all, you saw a human being eating watermelon with mustard on it?
Tausch did it, Dan. He did it, and he said he liked it.
Yeah, there was a young man that did it. I thought it was crazy. I don't know. I'm guessing you've done something goofy at some point.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I'm an idiot. But mustard's disgusting. Watermelon doesn't need anything, so I don't understand how that combination happened. I don't know if I have any crazy summer food things. I did see this thing on Instagram where this lady took ice cream sandwiches and one by one laid them on the bottom of like a cake pan essentially. And then she made a layer of that. Then she took Cool Whip, layered that on top of the ice cream sandwiches, then crushed Oreos, did that, laid ice cream sandwiches again, Cool Whip, crushed Oreo, froze it, and made like a cake out of that. I'm into that for the summertime. For
sure.
That sounds that doesn't sound weird at all. That sounds fantastic.
Shout out to some of the moms on Instagram for that one.
Tausch is a big ice cream cake supporter. I know you're probably in on that one. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think natural cake or normal cake is gross. Ice cream cake is the only cake that I think is like worthy of being eaten.
Yeah, you know what's worse, Dan, is it's a fake ice cream cake that actually has cake in the ice cream. It's got to be, you got to have the crunch, with the crunchy stuff with like the caramelized stuff inside the ice cream cake. Don't be messing with marble cake and ice cream.
Dan, thanks so much for the time, making some time for us to hear this morning. We really appreciate your insight and a lot of fascinating stuff for us to break down throughout the rest of today's show on Jordan Love and the state of the Packers heading into the 2023 season. Thanks so much. Always appreciate catching up with you.
You got it, guys. Have a great summer.
ESPN NFL analyst Dan Orlovsky joining us on Wilde and Tausch. Jesse and Tausch today with Jason Wilde on assignment. Lots to break down from our conversation with Dan Orlovsky out of the gates, off and running on a Tuesday. Wilde and Tausch on ESPN Wisconsin and Wisconsin On Demand.
This is Wilde and Tausch, presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Wisconsin. Call Gina Della from Pella today.